and nothing like the sterile luxury she came from. She turned to face him. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier, but still uncertain. She asked him the question that would change everything. She asked if his bed was big enough for two. The question hung in the air between them. He knew what she was really asking. It wasn't about the bed. It was about whether there was room in his life for her. Whether he could make space for someone who came with so much baggage and danger. Whether he was willing to risk everything for something that might be impossible. He should have said no. He should have been smart and cautious and protective of the life he'd built. Instead, he heard himself answer before he could stop. He told her only if she was the one beside him. Audrey's eyes widened. Logan felt heat rise to his face. He'd just crossed a line he could never uncross. He'd just admitted something he'd been denying for a year. He'd just handed her the power to destroy him. Audrey took a step back, her hand going to her mouth. She told him he shouldn't have said that. She said she was just being impulsive, that she wasn't thinking straight. Logan forced himself to speak through the tightness in his throat. He told her he wasn't being impulsive. He knew exactly what he was saying. But then he made himself add the rest, the truth she needed to hear. He told her he could lose his job over this. He could lose his reputation. But what really terrified him was losing Noah. He looked toward the hallway where his son slept, then back at Audrey. He told her that if she stayed, it had to be because she meant it, not because she was running from something. Audrey's face crumpled. She whispered that she didn't know what to do anymore. Logan went to the closet, pulled out a blanket and pillow, and set them on the couch. He told her to get some sleep. He said if she still wanted to be there in the morning, they would figure it out together. If she didn't, he would drive her home, and they would never speak of this again. Audrey nodded slowly. She sat down on the couch, still in her wet dress, and pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Logan told her good night and walked down the hallway to his room. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing sleep wouldn't come. In the living room, Audrey lay curled on the couch, eyes open in the darkness. Both of them understood that everything had just changed. By morning, their lives would be different. They just didn't know yet how much it would cost them. Logan woke before dawn to the sound of movement in the living room. For a disoriented moment, he'd forgotten Audrey was there. Then reality crashed back and he sat up. He pulled on jeans and a shirt, ran a hand through his hair, and walked down the hallway. Audrey was standing by the window, still wearing her gala dress. It had dried stiff and wrinkled overnight. She was looking out at the empty street, her arms wrapped around herself. When she heard Logan's footsteps, she turned. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Neither of them spoke right away. Logan asked if she'd slept at all. Audrey shook her head and said maybe an hour. She looked down at her ruined dress and laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. She said she must look like a disaster. Logan wanted to tell her she looked beautiful even like this, maybe especially like this, but he didn't trust himself to say it without revealing too much. Instead, he offered her coffee. They were standing in the kitchen when Noah's door opened. Logan's stomach dropped. He'd hoped to have this conversation, whatever it was going to be, before his son woke up. But Noah came padding down the hallway in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. He stopped dead when he saw Audrey. His face lit up with recognition and delight. Noah said her name like a question, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. He asked if she'd come to visit. Audrey glanced at Logan, uncertain. Logan crouched down to Noah's level and told him that Miss Audrey had needed a place to stay last night, so she'd slept on their couch. He said she'd be leaving soon. Noah's face fell. He asked Audrey if she had to go right away, and told her his dad made really good scrambled eggs. Audrey studied the boy. She knelt down and told Noah she'd love to stay for breakfast if it was okay with his dad. Noah turned to Logan with pleading eyes. Logan knew this was a mistake, knew every minute Audrey stayed made things more complicated, but he couldn't bring himself to say no. He told Noah to go wash his hands while he started cooking. Breakfast was strange and domestic and dangerous all at once. Noah chatted about school, about his friend Tyler, who could do a backflip, about the picture he was drawing of a dragon. Audrey listened with genuine interest, asked questions, laughed at his jokes. Logan watched them together and felt an ache in his chest. This was what he'd been afraid of. Not just his own feelings, but Noah's. His son was already getting attached. They were finishing their eggs when Logan's phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, and the blood drained from his face. It was a message from an unknown number. No words, just a photograph. Audrey's car parked in front of his house, time stamped at 11:43 the previous night. Below it, a second message appeared. It said the sender was wondering how much this information might be worth to certain interested parties. Audrey saw his expression and asked what was wrong. He handed her the phone without speaking. She stared at the screen, her face going white. Noah asked if something bad had happened. Logan forced himself to smile and told his son everything was fine, but he needed to talk to Miss Audrey alone for a minute. He asked Noah to go brush his teeth and get ready for school. After Noah left, Audrey set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. She said they knew. Someone had been watching, had followed her, had taken photos. Logan asked who would do that. Audrey closed her eyes and told him it could be anyone. Her parents might have hired someone to keep tabs on her. Graham might have had her followed. Hell, it could be a reporter hoping for a story. She said she had to leave immediately, had to get out before anyone saw her in daylight. Logan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her to stay and fight, but he knew she was right. Every minute she remained put Noah at greater risk. Audrey stood and smoothed down her dress. She looked at Logan and told him she was sorry. She said she shouldn't have come, shouldn't have dragged him into her mess. Logan caught her hand before she could turn away. He told her not to apologize for needing help. He told her he'd meant what he said last night. All of it. Audrey's eyes filled with tears. She squeezed his hand once, then let go, and walked to the door. Noah came running out, toothbrush still in hand, and called after her. He asked if she was leaving already, if she'd come back to visit. Audrey crouched down and hugged him. She told him she'd try her best. Then she straightened, nodded once to Logan, and walked out into the morning light. Logan watched her drive away and knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. He was right. 2 days later, Logan was called into an emergency board meeting. He walked into the conference room to find Harold Sinclair sitting at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone. Marlene Sinclair sat beside him, lips pressed into a thin line. Several board members Logan barely knew filled the other seats. Audrey was not there. Logan noticed Marcus Trent, a quiet older board member, watching him with an unreadable expression. Harold wasted no time. He said photographs had been delivered to the board, showing Audrey's vehicle parked outside Logan's residence in the middle of the night. He asked if Logan had an explanation. Logan kept his voice level and told them that Audrey had needed assistance, that she'd been distressed and had come to him for help, that he'd offered her a place to rest, and nothing more. Marlene's voice was cold as ice. She asked if Logan understood what his help could do to her daughter's reputation. She said that Audrey was in a delicate position, that there were important business arrangements being finalized, that this kind of scandal could jeopardize everything. Logan felt anger rise in his throat. He asked if by arrangements she meant forcing Audrey to marry someone she didn't love. The room went silent. Harold stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. He told Logan he was out of line, that he was speaking about matters he didn't understand. Logan met his gaze and said he understood perfectly. He understood that they were treating their daughter like a bargaining chip. Harold's expression darkened. He said Logan was suspended effective immediately, pending investigation into whether he'd violated company policy regarding appropriate professional boundaries. Logan left the building with his access badge deactivated and his office belongings in a box. Other employees stared as he walked past. Some looked away quickly. Others whispered to each other. Logan kept his head up and kept walking. He'd known this could happen. He'd accepted the risk. But knowing it and living it were two different things. That afternoon, he got a call from Noah's school. The principal's voice was carefully neutral. She said there had been an incident, that some parents had raised concerns, that it might be best if Logan came in to discuss the situation. When Logan arrived, the principal told him that someone had been talking. Other parents had heard rumors about Logan's inappropriate relationship with his employer. One mother had said she didn't want her child playing with Noah if that was the kind of household he came from. Logan felt rage and helplessness war inside him. He asked what the school expected him to do. The principal said nothing officially, but suggested it might be wise to keep Noah home for a few days until things settled down. Logan understood what she really meant. His son was being pushed out because of gossip and judgment, and things Noah couldn't possibly understand. That evening, Noah asked why his friend Tyler's mom had said he couldn't come over to play anymore. Logan tried to explain that sometimes grown-ups made decisions that didn't make sense, that it wasn't Noah's fault, that people sometimes got scared of things they didn't understand. Noah asked if it was because of Miss Audrey. Logan went very still. He asked why Noah would think that. Noah said some of the other kids had heard their parents talking. They'd said Logan's dad was in trouble because he'd let a lady stay over. Noah asked if that meant Miss Audrey was bad. Logan pulled his son close and told him that Audrey wasn't bad, that she was one of the best people Logan had ever met, and that sometimes good people needed help, and it was always right to help them, even if other people didn't understand. Noah seemed satisfied with that answer, but Logan felt sick. His choices were affecting his son. The one thing he'd promised himself would never happen was happening. He lay awake that night wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake, if he should have closed the door and kept his life safe and small. The next day, things got worse. Logan received a letter from a law firm he didn't recognize. The letterhead was expensive, the language precise and threatening. It stated that if Logan continued to engage in contact with Miss Sinclair, or to spread damaging information about the Sinclair family, legal action would be taken. It went on to note that Logan's custody arrangement with his deceased wife's family had been provisional, and suggested that his recent behavior raised questions about his judgment and fitness as a parent. Logan read the letter 3 times, hands shaking. They were threatening to take Noah. They were using his son as leverage to force him to stay away from Audrey. He wanted to crumple the letter, to throw it away, to pretend it didn't exist. Instead, he folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. He needed to think clearly. He needed to protect Noah. That had to come first. It always had to come first. But that evening, Audrey showed up at his door again. This time it was earlier, before sunset, and she wasn't running from anything. She looked tired and determined. She told Logan she'd heard about his suspension, about the letter, about what was happening to Noah. She said she'd come to tell him she was going to fix it. Logan asked how she planned to do that. Audrey said she'd confront her parents, tell them to back off, threaten to walk away from the company entirely if they didn't. Logan shook his head and told her she couldn't do that. He said the company was her life's work, that she'd fought too hard to let her parents take it from her. Audrey's voice rose. She said none of it mattered if they were using it to hurt him and Noah. Logan told her that's exactly what they wanted, to push her into making an emotional decision that would cost her everything. He said they needed to be smarter than that. They stood there in his doorway, neither willing to back down. Finally, Audrey asked him what he wanted her to do. Logan took a breath and told her the truth. He said he'd spent 4 years building a stable life for Noah. He said he'd do anything to protect his son, even if it meant stepping away from her. But he also said that meeting her had shown him there was more to life than just surviving, and he didn't want to go back to pretending he didn't feel what he felt. Audrey studied him for a long moment. Then she told him something she'd never said out loud before.